Hello everyone, thanks for tuning into the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Chamberlain Osoa, Channels Television here in Lagos, and I'm joined by Vincent Makori from Voice of America in Washington.
Well, thanks. I'm Vincent Makori at the Voice of America. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Chamberlain Osoa in Lagos brings you that story.
Protecting the interests of people living with disabilities is a national responsibility that can be further enhanced with the prevention of blinding diseases for the visually impaired, as well as provision of education for them. That forms part of the intervention of Pasali School of the Blind. This they've done for 60 years now. Channel TV correspondent Olumide Macaulay reports.
According to the World Health Organization, vision impairment affects at least 2.2 billion people globally. In at least 1 billion of that number, vision impairment could have been prevented or hasn't been addressed yet. In sub-Saharan Africa, those cases are a dime a dozen, as Nigeria's Minister of Health, Osaje Hanire, has disclosed that 84% of blinding diseases in Nigeria are avoidable. While that sinks in, a part of that percentage are in this school in Lagos, Pasali School for the Blind, established 6 decades ago by the Catholic Church and named after Pope Pius XII Eugenio Pacelli. As you pass by, the statue of the Virgin Mary welcomes you with open arms. They gather here, the sisters, the teachers, invited guests, and the children, to demonstrate some of the skills they've learned in arts and crafts and performing arts to commemorate the school's 60th anniversary. The vision impaired play, the hearing impaired from another school dance, and the sisters can't wait to get in on the action. This enthusiasm is echoed by the principal of the school, who is grateful for a number of reasons.
I'm grateful to a lot of Nigerians, many Nigerians who are so generous. They come here to donate, both in cash and in kind. The greatest achievement is that some of our children that have graduated here, the students that graduate here, they go to secondary school, from secondary, university. My greatest joy is that many of them are happily married with children, and we have many of them that are barristers, we have bankers, we have musicians. Goban is one of us Pachelian. So that's what gives us inner joy, that we have achieved so great and they are doing very well.
A counselor and a teacher share more info.
We have people that are average, we have poor people among them that they can't afford big school or school that they need to pay school fees. So these children need assistance in many ways.
Working with visually impaired, it's not really easy, both with them and with anybody working with them. Some of them, I can't see, can somebody come to marry me? I can't see, will somebody accept me?
That acceptance is part of what historical figures Helen Keller and Louis Braille worked on many years before.
She co-founded Helen Keller's International in 1915 and worked for the American Foundation for the Blind.
Louis Braille was born January 4th, 1809 in France. He lost his sight at the age of 3 as a result of an injury.
Other students share their hopes and aspirations.
Now I can cope with sighted. I've competed with sighted before, but I defeated them, and I'm happy. I know that the future is bright.
When I came to Pasali, I can remember that I don't know how to read and write. I can't spell, but through Pasali, I can read, I can write, and I can spell.
For vision impaired children, education in a caring environment is light in a dark place. And while they can hardly see it, they can certainly feel it. Olumide Macaulay, Channels Television News.
It's no longer news that the Russian-Ukraine war is disrupting agricultural production in countries on the African continent. Egypt is also affected, but they're now taking measures to cushion the effect of the crisis on food.
Egypt is on the verge of a food crisis as the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine has impeded it from receiving the much-needed grain from abroad. The country is a major wheat importer in the world, and about 80% of its wheat imports come from Russia and Ukraine. Since the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Egypt has stepped up its efforts to increase the country's grain reserves. To encourage farmers to sell more crops to the government, Egypt in March increased the procurement price of local wheat. In May, the Supply and Internal Trade Minister of Egypt said the wheat stock was enough to cover domestic consumption until January 2023.
To the monetary and fiscal policy more than the technology.
A professor in agricultural economics, Sharif Fayyad, says over the years, the Egyptian government has encouraged farmers to increase the area of cultivated land by providing seeds, fertilizers and planting technique supports and increasing the procurement price. Yet the degree of food security in Egypt is still quite low.
We can say like 0.6 and the range from 0 up till 1. As an index for food security. And 0.6 is on the edge.
Fayyad says Egypt can achieve self-sufficiency in food consumption in the short term, but still has a long way to go in tackling potential food crises in the light of future external shocks and other global crises.
I don't think that people are going to be starving. No, Egypt is trying to solve this kind of problems, but the threats are bigger and bigger.
A number of key policy actions is needed to reduce dependence on Russia and Ukraine in the short term. This will help Egypt's agriculture and food system to become fairer and more resilient.
While Ethiopia's civil war has not reached the capital Addis Ababa, rights groups say authorities arbitrarily detained thousands of Tigrayans last year in waves of ethnically motivated arrests. VOA spoke to recently released Tigrayans about the conditions they endured. Henry Wilkins reports from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Ethiopia's Addis Ababa appears as a modern international city with the African Union headquarters, prompting some to call it the continent's diplomatic capital. But rights groups say tensions are boiling beneath the surface from Ethiopia's war with Tigrayan forces that saw thousands of Tigrayans last year arbitrarily arrested and abused after the government claimed some Tigrayans in the capital of being undercover agents. VOA spoke to a Tigrayan man, his identity hidden for safety, who said he was released in February after being jailed in the capital for 3 months in a makeshift prison.
The police might have mood swings that you might get kicked. There are a lot of ways we were kicked. I personally also was kicked one day for doing nothing. I did nothing. I was about to take a shower. Guys who were kicked a lot of times. They only need a reason to kick you.
Rights groups like Amnesty International say ethnically motivated detentions increased days after the government declared a state of emergency in early November following threats by Tigrayan forces to attack the city. Samur, who declined to give his full name, says he fled to Uganda in March after being held for nearly 3 months in a prison in Addis Ababa.
Astonishing, to learn that there were kids with us there. I specifically remember this kid. He was in grade 7. He barely began high school, and he wasn't even born in Tigray. His father is a Tigrayan, and his mother is not even Tigrayan.
In May, the death in custody of a Tigrayan general and a former commander in the African Union mission in Somalia, General Gebremeddin Fikadu, sparked protests in the capital. Reuters reported in June at least 15,000 Tigrayans were detained between November and February, and that 17 died in custody, some after being taken from the capital to a prison in the town of Mizan Teferi. VOA spoke to another Tigrayan man, his identity also hidden, who recalls the state of inmates transferred from the Mizan Teferi prison to his prison.
5 prisoners had to share 1 loaf of bread and 2 liters of water for 3 days. That means 1 glass of water per person per day. All were in terrible condition. They were very hungry and thirsty.
VOA could not independently verify the reported deaths and allegations of abuse while in custody. The state-funded human rights organisation Ethiopian Human Rights Commission claims all Tigrayans held arbitrarily in the capital have been released.
All the arrests, mass arrests, and that happened during that period are connected in relation, in particular, to the state of emergency. Have ceased since the lifting of the state of emergency around February. Yes, to our knowledge, all the people have been released.
Ethiopia lifted its 6-month state of emergency in February, but the Commission in late June confirmed reports that 9,000 Tigrayans are still being held in the town of Samara and called for their immediate release. Ethiopia's government did not respond to VOA's request for comment, but has in the past denied any ethnically motivated arrests or abuse of Tigrayans. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
A Senegalese NGO has covered an area of ocean floor with concrete sculpture designed to revive marine life and raise awareness about desertification and plastic pollution. Oceanium, the marine conservation NGO, has placed concrete installations 4 meters below the ocean surface. The initiative is also using the installation to raise awareness about protecting life in oceans and seas.
The Senegalese NGO is raising awareness about the threats of overfishing and its consequences on marine life with unique underwater art installations off the shores of the country's capital, Dakar. Created by artists Mischa Sanders and Philippi Putzer, the artworks are made of eco-friendly materials, part of an initiative launched in 2021 by the environmental protection NGO Oceanium. The group is calling this latest project Africa's only underwater museum.
L'idée en fait est de mettre ces œuvres-là.
The idea is to put these artworks there, so they are reefs. Marine life will come and cling to these reefs. So we'll have micro seaweeds that will cling to them, fish that will eat these algae, and so on. The fish that was on the rock will move to this art piece, and eventually the fish that was there will move from one concrete installation to another. The bigger the museum gets, the more fish it will attract, and then the more smaller fish it attracts, the more bigger fish will come.
Plus il y a de petits poissons, plus il y a le gros poisson qui va venir.
Once among the richest in the world, West Africa's fish stocks are being depleted by industrial trawlers which comb the oceans to feed the European and Asian markets, according to experts. In Senegal, dwindling stocks pose a threat to livelihood and food security. Some 600,000 people, almost 20% of the workforce, work in fishing, and their hauls account for 75% of the country's animal protein intake, according to 2017 World Bank data. 30-year-old Dakar fisherman Blaise Mbegwe knows this more than most. Every morning when he embarks on his pirogue from the Sumbadelin fishing dock, he never knows what he'll be able to bring back after a day at sea. He says over the years, fish stocks have dwindled, forcing many fishermen like him to travel further to find their catch.
Our government grants a lot of fishing licenses. Where we used to find fish, we now find trawlers. 20 kilometers off our coast, where we used to fish, there are now boats that spread their big nets. The tuna that we used to catch and other species are caught up by the trawlers. We don't have much left. Today we caught 7 kilograms of fish. The fish we went to catch, we sell for 2,000 francs a kilogram, and it weighs 7 kilograms, so we have earned nothing. That's the current situation. Sometimes the profits are big, but there are times like this. Before, we didn't think about immigration because before, we could go to sea and come back with a lot of money. Now it's not possible anymore. We lose more than we gain.
According to a recent study published in the Journal of Fish and Fisheries, around a quarter of all fish caught in the world's ocean each year are used to make fish meal and fish oil rather than food for people. Part of it is used to feed the booming global agriculture industry, which in 2014 harvested 74 million tons of fish worth an estimated $160 billion, according to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. Potentially adding to the incentives to overfish, fish prices are expected to increase by a further 33% by 2030, as demand is high and supplies are under strain.
When I was a kid, I used to catch fish this big. The first barracuda I caught it here. Today, to see a barracuda, I have to go out to sea, and when I see one, I'm so happy. Whereas before, we used to see them by the hundreds.
According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, around 35% of fisheries are overfished, compared to 10% in 1974.
As Kenya heads to a highly contested presidential election in August, many worry about a repeat of deadly violence seen in the past votes. The Kenyan group Mothers of Victims and Survivors is calling for all sides to maintain peace during this year's polls. Juma Majanga reports from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi.
Bena Buluma, also known as Mama Victor, is holding on to the only memories left of her two sons at her makeshift home in Nairobi's Mathare informal settlements. On August 9, 2017, her sons Bernard and Victor Okoth, both young men, were shot dead following a police crackdown on election protests in the area just a day after the presidential polls. 5 years later, the killers still have not been held accountable.
If my sons had killed someone on the road, they would have been arrested. But the police who killed my sons have not been arrested to date. That's what pains me the most. I ask myself why. They are all human beings, and the law should serve equally.
Mathare, one of the biggest slums in Africa, with some of the most densely populated poor neighborhoods in Nairobi, has remained a constant hotspot of election violence.
Every time we have elections, they know what is our issues, but they have not actualized. So bringing your manifesto to say that you bring water, you do this, then it just brings horizontal violence, because you're already living in a poor, it's violence. It is violence, living in it, you know?
Mama Victor founded the group of Mothers of Victims and Survivors Network to help families seek justice. The group has petitioned election authorities and participants in the August presidential election to ensure peace during polls.
Tunataka peaceful election. We want a peaceful election, and that's not all. As mothers of victims, we want justice for our children and compensation.
The Kenyan police have been accused of using excessive force in handling past election-related protests. With just over a month to the general elections, the National Police Service says it is prepared to provide a secure environment for the polls to run peacefully. In a statement to VOA, police spokesperson Bruno Shioso said steps have been taken to improve security, including new election security training and additional equipment for officers. More than 1,100 people were killed in riots and attacks after the disputed 2007 vote. But as the clock ticks toward this year's balloting, observers are cautiously optimistic that the polls will be peaceful. Juma Majanga for VOA News, Nairobi.
Kenyan singer and budding Nollywood actress Habida Maloney, who has lived in 7 different countries, has just made her 8th stop in the United Arab Emirates. The MTV Mama Awardee has hit the ground running by scoring her first performance just weeks after relocating to the tourist hub, Dubai. She speaks to Channel TV's Mayowa Adegoke about her journey and excitement to be part of Nollywood.
It's Habida's first ever performance in Dubai, having recently relocated from the United Kingdom. With over 20 years in the music industry across 8 countries, the Kenyan-born singer is still in the game, sharing her gift with the world.
When this came, I said yes. You also have to say yes to the opportunity. So for this is up my alley completely. And I'm trying, and I know this is my brand. I have songs to perform here, they make sense. So this is the path I'm on. So it's almost like this is just meeting me.
The multi-talented entertainer has lived in Kenya, United Kingdom, USA, Oman, and now UAE. The constant moving, she says, does come with its ups and downs.
Because I get bored easily. So the moving is quite exciting for me, but work-wise, it's very crippling because you build and then you have to go and build again, and then you have to leave. But now I can say South Africans know me, I can say Tanzanians know me, I can say Dubai people are gonna know me, I can say UK people know me. So it's like I'm planting seeds in little, but it's not long enough ever. I think South Africa was the furthest I got because it happened quickly, because the industry is so alive, you know? I'm waiting for Nigeria. If I go to Nigeria, I'll never leave, I think.
At age 16, she moved to the United Kingdom, where her music journey began, and then proceeded to the United States, where she obtained a degree in performing arts. A chance trip to Kenya brought her a first taste of fame with the song Sunshine, which also won an MTV Mama Award.
Can you be my sunshine, baby?
So I'm literally at a gas station with an old friend of mine, and he's like, you need to meet RK. And RK was one of the biggest producers at the time in Kenya. And he drives up. What do you call that? Serendipity? What do you call that? Karma? I don't know what you call that. He drove up and it was like, RK, this is Habida. Habida is RK studio tomorrow. And he was like, okay. And I went to the studio, and Nameless, who's the other person in the song, had a session after the meeting, so RK looked at him and said, you two in the studio. And that's how the song was born.
This is what I do.
Many years later, Habida is now in Dubai, seeking new opportunities, making connections, and working on new music. She's also working on some movies, including Golden Stripes, a Nollywood UK production by Peace Osigbe, in which she plays the mother of a boy murdered by a gang.
I love Nigerian films. I can stay up till 6 in the morning.
Habida's enthusiasm for Nollywood is no surprise, as the mother of two is also married to a Nigerian national. From Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, Maya Wadegoke for Channels Television.
Chinese government has finished constructing Zimbabwe's new parliament building outside the capital, Harare, at a cost of about $200 million. It replaces a colonial-era building, but critics say there are concerns about security and China's growing influence. Columbus Mavunga reports from Mount Hampton, Zimbabwe.
China will soon hand over a new 6-story parliament building to the government of Zimbabwe's president, Emerson Mnangagwa. Located about an hour's drive from the capital Harare, China provided a $200 million grant for the building, built by a Shanghai-based government-owned company. Reporters asked Kai Libo with Shanghai Construction Group about concerns that China may have bugged the new building. He reacted this way.
We are, you know that Zimbabwe and China are all with friends. As you know that a friend will not do such kind of things to your friends.
China has been accused of bugging the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, a claim that Beijing has denied. Authorities in Zimbabwe downplayed concerns about a foreign firm constructing the new parliament.
From my own experience and our observation from the way we started up to today, I'm not worried of anything.
Alexander Rusero, a politics professor at Africa University in Zimbabwe, says Beijing and Harare may have friendly ties, but eavesdropping in Zimbabwe's parliament building presents a serious threat.
Now to have that kind of institution, that kind of infrastructure fully, wholly donated by the Chinese, I think it should also lead us to wonder in as much as where will this take us to in terms of our pride, in terms of our dignity, and in terms of our much affinity in the notions of sovereignty.
Zimbabwe's president has repeatedly praised China, saying its investments in the country have bolstered Harare's independence, and government officials say the country is ready to leave behind the old colonial-era building. Columbus Mafunga for VOA News, Mount Hampden, Zimbabwe.
Well, and that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and wild news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Channels Television has our last word from Lagos.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. Do remember, channelstv.com is your source for news and other programming. I'm Chamberlain Osar. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.